Hi everybody, this is Sid Walker. Our topic today is how to overcome call reluctance with what I call warm-ups. I've been a sales peak performance coach for over 40 years. I'm considered a top coach on call reluctance. I've helped thousands of people break through that barrier, which of course costs everybody a lot of money. Including me. I figure my call reluctance cost me from age 25 to 45 probably $5 million. I'm laughing and crying at the same time on that one. So anyway, I finally broke through at 45, and of course that's what I've been teaching for years. I've got the most highly endorsed book on call reluctance on Amazon. I wrote that book 10 years ago. Still going strong. And you can get 30 free pages of that book just to preview that. I'll tell you how to do that in a second. I'm also the only guy with an internet course. It's called Fearless Prospecting Mentality. Fearless Prospecting Mindset. I also have another book called Prospecting Mentality. Wrote that a long time ago. So it's an $800 course that I recently made free as part of a free Skool group. And that course is only 2 years old, so that's my latest and greatest material. It's about 5.5 hours, and there's a lot there. I mean, I'm really a peak performance coach, so it's a lot of it's pretty generic in terms of peak performance, but call reluctance is the excuse. It's all focused on that particular topic. So to sign up for the free Skool, there's a link below there. That's one way to do it. Or go to fearlessprospecting.net. Either way is going to work. And then when you get on the Skool, there's 3 steps there. Step 2, after you kind of say who you are and what you're promoting, be sure to download. There's 2 PDFs there you can download, and one of those is the 30 free pages of my book, How I Conquered Call Reluctance. So check that out. All right, so why do we have call reluctance? I've been studying this forever. It's way more complicated than you think. There's a part of your brain that thinks its job is to help us survive, or it thinks it's in charge of our survival. Of course, it's not, but it thinks it is, which is the problem. So you got a part of your brain that's on a life and death mission to keep you from doing anything that looks risky, anything outside your comfort zone. And of course, prospecting falls into that category. And so call reluctance is really a very natural thing to have happen. People think that there's something wrong with them, and there really isn't. It's just you're listening to a part of your brain that hates risk, it hates rejection, hates the unknown, hates anything uncertain. It's afraid of its own shadow. And so prospecting is in that category of risk. Prospecting to that part of your brain, prospecting is way too risky, even though it's really not. And of course, I'm calling that part of the brain the ego. That's more the spiritual definition than the medical definition. I've never found the medical definition to be much use to anybody, so I like the spiritual one. It's way simpler. Because one way to say it is there's 2 voices in your head, really. One's the Holy Spirit, which you can access through your intuition. I call it the intuitive spirit. And the other one is your ego. Those are the 2 main voices. That's the Adam and Eve story. So unfortunately, most of us have been trained to listen to the ego part, which is really, most people think your ego is a sense of self-esteem or self-worth, and that's actually true. And that part's okay. I mean, certainly people can exaggerate that, but the rest of the ego is totally negative. Some people would say it's the source of all negativity. So it's a nasty piece of work. It's just constantly in our way. One of my favorite sayings is, everything you want in life is on the other side of fear. Okay? The fear is created by the ego, that part of your brain. So There's a lot to it, and I'll get to more of that as as we do more of these videos. But your ego, for example, wants to get everything perfect the first time, make no mistakes. It wants everyone to say yes. It wants everyone to love you. Okay, it's not going to happen. That's an impossible goal in sales. But you'd be surprised how many people think that's normal. I work with a bunch of real estate people. They all think that. They all basically think if everyone doesn't love you and everyone's not saying yes, you're doing something wrong. That's how your ego thinks. So it's insane, folks. It's insane. And of course, the other part of the reality is that this reality is so complicated. You can't keep doing the same thing all the time and expect it to work. Like with phone language, I mean, you can script the first 15 to 20 words. After that, to me, if you're reading a script, you're putting people to sleep. You need to be able to trust your intuitive instincts and interact with people. I mean, that's the only way you really connect, which is what getting on the phone's all about, is connecting with people, getting their interest and attention, and getting them to say, tell me more. Okay, scripts don't do that. And of course, I've got modules on all these things in depth in the course. So that's a powerful way to get started. If you're serious about overcoming your call reluctance, my course is probably the most powerful thing you can start with, as far as I know. I've been doing this for decades. There's not that much material out there. A lot of platitudes. A lot of people, have ideas about how to do it, but most of it's nowhere near the depth that I've developed over the last 40 years. All right. What does the ego do to keep you off the phone or keep you from prospecting? Probably it does a lot of different things, which we'll talk about in subsequent videos, but the main thing I'm talking about today is it creates negative judgments about prospecting. And that's a problem. And this all happens in seconds, but and the ego likes logic. It likes linear logic. So it seems to make sense, but it's afraid of its own shadow, and then it uses logical reasons to get you to stop taking action. Okay, that's not going to help you much. But it'll say things like, you don't have the right phone language, your leads are no good, this is the wrong time of day to be making calls, no one is interested in what I'm offering, this is a waste of time, this will never work the way I'm doing it, I need to find a better approach. That's a main theme. Let's try to figure out how to make this work better. Because then, of course, when you move into that mode, when you're trying to figure out, when you stop taking action and try to figure out how to make it work better, the ego wins. You're not acting. There's no action anymore. Nothing's happening. The list is endless of what the ego can come up with to get you to stop making calls. So that's the first step, is to become aware of what some of those things are, those negative judgments, and realize it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all an illusion. So what can you do to counter the ego, doing its tricks? Probably one of the more powerful things is what I'm talking about is the warm-ups. And a warm-up is a phrase or a kind of a one-liner that you use to counter the logic of the ego when it's trying to judge prospecting negatively to get you off the phone or get you from walking in the door or whatever you're doing to prospect. So the most powerful warm-up is simply do not judge prospecting in any way before, during, or after prospecting. Let me say it again. That's kind of the whole thing, all in one sentence. Do not judge prospecting in any way before, during, or after prospecting. Okay, that's the goal. If you can do that, you're taking a machine gun to your call reluctance. Because negatively judging is an ego trick, that will keep you from taking any risk or any action that looks like a potential risk. Remember, it's in charge of survival. So anything outside your comfort zone, it's going to say, no way, we're not doing that. And it's going to come up with logical reasons for you not to do it. So the other way to say it, and you've seen this happen, is as soon as you negatively judge prospecting, it only takes seconds before you've decided something else is more important to do. Could be wash the car, could be have lunch, anything. It happens fast. And you don't even realize it's all a trick your ego's playing on you to get you to stop taking any risks, or it won't even let you get on the phone in the first place. I did that for years. I'd just stare at the phone and not be able to pick it up. So that's the goal. Remember, that's the goal of the ego. It wants to keep you from taking any kind of risky action because it thinks it's a threat to your survival, which of course it isn't. All right. So how do you reprogram your brain away from negatively judging prospecting? In other words, you can't get rid of your ego. You can learn to ignore it. That's another topic for another call. But that's what we're talking about today is a little bit more proactive, where you're actually coming up with counters for whatever your ego is going to come up with as its negative judgment. These leads are no good. How do you come up with something to interact or to counter that? So a warm-up, basically, I have 400 of these in the school. I tell people, go through them, find 10 or 15 that you like, and then memorize them, read them several times a day. They're really powerful, and you use them before you get on the phone, and you use them while you're making calls. Because your ego's not going to stop trying to get you off the phone once you even start making calls. I'm sure you've all experienced that. So there's there's hundreds of these. So and a lot of them are spiritual. I'll say more about that in a second. But here's a couple examples of my favorites. Probably the most powerful one for me when I broke through my call reluctance was dial, don't think. Or some people might say, don't think, dial. Okay, either one works. I tend to say dial, don't think. But if I'm in that mode, if I have that thought, I can call anybody. If I'm not thinking, I can call anyone, and I can keep calling. As soon as I start to think, then I have negative judgments about prospecting, and I'm doing something else. That happens in seconds. I'm sure you've had that experience. All right, so if you don't judge prospecting in any way, your fear or resistance, will substantially decrease, be reduced, sometimes disappear. So it's the most powerful thing you can do is do not negatively judge prospecting, but that takes some practice and that takes some reprogramming, and that's what a lot of my coaching work is about. And actually it's interesting because to stop thinking, actually to your ego feels dangerous or irresponsible. It'll judge that, okay, negatively. That's really risky, to be more dangerous or to, it's saying it's irresponsible not to be worried about breaking the rules, okay? Yeah, your ego's a piece of work. And of course, that's what it's doing all the time, not just related to sales and prospecting, but all in every aspect of your life. So your ego's negatively judging and trying to move you into thinking and trying to figure things out in order to get you to stop taking action, so they can hold you back. Doesn't want you to do anything risky. Getting out of that comfort zone is a big no-no, and prospecting is in that category because you don't know how people are going to respond. I was, when I'm coaching people, one of the things I always like to hear, it happens to most everybody, at some point in the process, usually after a few hours, and fooling around with different things, and then they made some calls, they'll say, I'm surprised how nice people are. Okay, that's the reality. Most people are nice. Your ego makes you remember the one call where somebody yelled at you and told you to get a real job. Okay. Another warm-up. One of my favorites, SW, 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 which are, of course, also my initials, Sid Walker. But that's the old Zig Ziglar line. Some will, some won't, so what? And what that really means is it doesn't matter what happens on any one call. Your ego wants to judge and evaluate every call and decide whether you're succeeding or failing all the time, and that's part of the judgment. I mean, your ego is a negative judgment machine gun. It just never stops. It's always judging and trying to get you to either fix things or think about stuff or figure out an easier way, anything but take a risk. And so, the SW, I mean, the essence is the only way you can fail at prospecting is not to do it. That's a little hard for some people to get their head around at first, but it's a powerful concept because a lot of sales, a lot of prospecting. I mean, most everything is out of your control if you really start to learn how all this works. The illusion is your ego is making you think that you can control things, but when you're dealing with people, everything's happening 100 miles an hour, and it's way less controllable than you realize. And I've proven that with my program, my Selling Without Wrestling. I have another big website that's free. It's called sellingwithoutwrestling.com. That's for financial advisors. And I've been a champion of the low-key approach for my whole career, really. I think I said I've been a coach. It's over 40 years at this point. I started when I was 25. I got certified to coach I guess I was 30, and got serious about it at that point. So I was 15 years ahead of anybody doing any coaching for the most part. And then I mentioned spiritual references. I spent 10 years as a lay monk in a monastery run by women in Los Angeles. That was an amazing experience. I've always been kind of a personal growth junkie, but I'd never done anything on the spiritual piece. And that was the most powerful program on intuition you could imagine. It wasn't any specific religion. It was several of them. I studied several religions and definitely had some of my favorite books and stuff. I learned a lot doing that. We did a lot of reading. And, of course, lay monk means, we bought a house across the street from the monastery. Everybody kind of lives in the neighborhood. I mean, the real serious folks live at the monastery, but lay monk means you keep your job and your money and you live in the neighborhood and you spend your free time doing service and going to class and all kinds of neat stuff, really. It was a lot of fun. And but so I have an interesting perspective there. I'm kind of an unusual resource in terms of my background in helping people break through fear. Because a lot of it the spiritual piece is very powerful. And one of my favorite spiritual warm-ups is, you can use the word God, universe, cosmos, whatever you want to put in there. But it's your job is to find the people God wants you to help. Okay? Find the people God wants you to help, or the universe, or cosmos, or, fill in the blank. Whatever that source is for you. And probably one of the most powerful warm-ups I just stumbled into one day was God's in charge of who shows interest. Your ego is not. Okay? I mean, let that one in. God's in charge, or the universe is in charge of who shows interest. Your ego is not. Your ego is a control freak. It's trying to make everything happen, and it thinks it can. It can't. Your ego's probably got, way less control than it's obsessed with trying to have control. But this reality doesn't work that way. All right. Well, I could keep going. I said there's 400 of those warm-ups. So anyway, you get the idea. You have to reprogram how you think about prospecting, or you're not going to do it. Okay, you get the most powerful part of your brain that thinks it's in charge of your survival hates prospecting. Okay, that's the problem. So you got to learn your way around it. You got to learn to ignore it. You got to learn to reprogram yourself, and then you got to have the guts to jump in and do it, because that's probably the quickest way to get through any kind of fear, doubt, worry, anxiety, resistance. Is to feel the fear. It's just to get on the phone and feel the fear. Because when you feel something, it disappears. It's when you don't experience it that it becomes a problem. I could talk about that all day, but you get the idea. So there's a tremendous amount of useful material in the course. It's the Fearless Prospecting Mindset is what I call it. If you're not a member, get signed up. It's all free. go to the link below. As I said, it's fearlessprospecting.net. If you're already signed up and you want to get back to the course, go to that link, and then you'll see log in, and up in the right-hand corner, if you're new to this site, you'll see where it says to sign in, or I think sign in or become a member. I can't remember. And then remember, there's 3 steps there. Step 2. Part of step 2, it says, sign up for your 15-minute call, and it also says download, do the free downloads, because one of those free downloads is the 30 pages of my book, and the other one are some action quotes that my favorite 40 action quotes off the internet. So be sure to do number 2 there and download those free handouts. And of course, as I just mentioned, sign up once you sign up for the Skool. There's links all over the place to sign up for the 15-minute quick start call with me. It's not a sales call. This is just to helping you figure out kind of what's in the way, what are the resources to get around that. I've got more resources than anybody on this stuff, and but the main goal is to help you identify what's holding you back and how to get around it. And so I'm really good at helping people find ways to break through and make more money. I mean, because that's the part most everybody's in denial about, is if you've got call reluctance, it's costing you a fortune. Okay, I think I said already. I mean, I had call reluctance. I still prospected and I made a decent living, but I had call reluctance from age 25 to 45, which means I could have doubled my income, which I conservatively conclude that to be $5 million over those 20 years. Okay. That's conservative. It's probably more than that. And you've all got your own stories about that. And the longer you've been around on the planet here, the worse it gets. Okay, because everybody tends to put it off. I put it off for 20 years before I really dealt, with my fear, doubt, worry, and anxiety related to picking up the phone. All right, so click on the links below. Sign up for the course, get your free downloads, sign up for your 15 quick start meetings, so you get to talk to me about this stuff. I'm like I said, I'm probably as good as anybody out there on helping people come up with ideas on how to get around whatever's holding them back. And so that's it for today. I hope we get to talk soon, and bye for now.